Whether you are transitioning from Overwatch or picking up Marvel Rivals as your first hero shooter, Rivals can be very complex and confusing with a ton of things that you need to know. Hi, I'm Coach Mills and I got top 200 in the Rivals beta and was consistently top 500 in Overwatch 1 and 2. Here are the 10 things that I wish I knew before playing Marvel Rivals. Rivals has 6 players per team, and you would think that the optimal setup is 2-2-2. Well, technically they are strategist, vanguard, and duelist. We're just gonna say support, tank, and DPS. Now, automatically, people think that balance is the key, so obviously you would need 2 of each role to have the best composition, but actually we haven't seen that to be true. 3-3, as in 3 tanks and 3 supports, has been seeing a ton of play and is an incredibly powerful strategy. But that being said, there have been really strong characters that counteract this strategy. As an example, I went up against 3-3 quite a bit, multiple times in a row in top 500 in the beta of Rivals, and I would oftentimes go Iron Man, which is one of the characters that is incredibly good if there's nothing to counter this character. Consistent spam into the backline supports that can't contest him, and then eventually an ultimate that is going to cut off that team's source of sustain. This required the enemy team to swap to something like the Punisher or Hela to deal with Iron Man, and all of a sudden 3-3 didn't exist. I've also seen compositions that had a single tank, someone like Venom, and multiple DPS that would be used primarily to take multiple angles and be extremely aggressive with that Venom. Now, I'm not saying that these compositions are meta or not meta. With all the buffs and nerfs and changes to the balance over the course of the first couple of months, the meta will not be defined, but I want to challenge you to not think that a balanced quote-unquote 2-2-2 strategy is gonna always be the most optimal, and I want you to start experimenting with compositions a bit more than that, because I know that there's a ton of different compositions that don't fit that mold but are still extremely powerful. Now, the next thing that I would highly recommend is to try every hero at least once. Try to conceptualize the game as much as possible. And this was one of my big mistakes. I jumped into Rivals and I just picked a couple of characters and primarily focused on grinding those 2 to 3 characters more than everything else. But it had me misunderstanding certain mechanics, not learning how certain ultimates worked, and generally just not really understanding the game as deeply as I actually want to. I think it's really important that if you want to get good at Rivals in the long haul, you should actually try to play all the heroes, learn what they do. I would really suggest playing at least 1 match with every single hero, not necessarily in comp, but in quick play, and learn how a hero works, learn what their strengths are, learn what their pain points are, and this is going to really help you develop when you finally decide to grind a couple of heroes later down the line. And as a core coaching philosophy when it comes to hero shooters, I suggest specialization in the long term. Having, 3 to 4 characters that you really focus all your time and practice time into, so that you get exposure to the many matchups, the many maps, and really get hyper expertise in these characters instead of trying to learn every single character at once. But this is not true for the beginning of a game, the start of a game. When you're really trying to understand the context of the game and take it all in, you really want to play a wide range of things and really learn about what every single character can do. But we have a ton more guides dropping on this channel incredibly soon, so if you want to become absolutely cracked as quickly as possible, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button and let us know down below what hero guides you want to see next, and we'll get right on it. But let's get back into the video. Now, the third thing that's incredibly important, especially those of you who have not played hero shooters all that much, is the value of natural cover. Now, natural cover are the areas on the map, the actual buildings, the obstacles, the things that you can use to deny enemy fire, deny enemy line of sight, and protect yourself in case someone wants to hit you with an ability or just generally shoot you. Now, I know that you feel like you might be able to stand in open areas a lot more because maybe you have higher life totals with slower times to kill than other games that you've played, but having cover is incredibly important because it lets you set the terms of an engagement. When you are fighting an enemy and you have cover and they don't, if you are ever losing that fight, you could just choose not to have it. If you're ever winning that fight, then the enemy can't run away from you or dip at a moment's notice because they are not playing next to cover. This means that as you move throughout the map, you typically want to move from one piece of cover to the next, with a couple of exceptions. Specifically, the Vanguard or tanks are going to be able to actually challenge open areas, and they don't have to rely on cover nearly as much, but still they would like to have a piece of cover so that when they are cycling their cooldowns and they need to have moments where they are allowing their supports to heal them back up, they aren't just completely committed to a fight 100% of the time. There are going to be key moments where you can leave cover, but you're definitely going to have to check out our full tanking guide that will drop on this channel before too long if you want to learn how to play tanks really well in Marvel Rivals. Now, of course, not all cover is going to be created equal, especially cover that can be destroyed. That cover is going to be a little bit less reliable than the cover that doesn't get destroyed or that you can permanently hide behind. But at the very least, if you're dodging an ability or an ultimate, a piece of cover that is not yet destroyed will still protect you from that source of damage. But the next thing that's a really important thing to know is, what is your hero's effective range? This is one of the most important concepts when we talk about a hero shooter. In what ranges is your hero's impact most optimal? Every character is going to have a multitude of ranges that they can actually do their job from, but you typically want to maximize the difference between your hero and the hero that you're trying to engage with. As a core example, let's take Hela, right? A character that has incredibly far effective range. This means in the beginning fight, or the neutral fight is what we call it, where abilities and damage is being traded between most teams and there's no picks on either side, oftentimes the Hela wants to maintain her range and rotate away from her threats that want to close in the gap. So that Black Panther that has a really close effective range, he wins the engagement if he can wrap around the map, flank, and find a situation where he closes in that gap to the Hela. And the Hela is the entire time trying to rotate away from that Black Panther, making it so she maintains the range between her and him, because as long as she does, she will win the fight every single time and she won't be under threat. Understanding where your character is most effective and least effective gives you kind of a core guideline to how you should engage a certain specific enemy, and also how you can win a fight overall. If you spend most of the game being more effective than an opponent, then you're going to add more to the fights and typically win those games. And going back to the Hela versus Black Panther example, one of the things that you could do on Hela that could get a lot of value is throwing your slow crowd control aggressively on like a tank, and then dealing a burst of damage with your team. This could be a really powerful strategy to do, because you're going to be able to kind of stuff that tank with a lot of damage, maybe kill them out of nowhere. However, in the situation where that Black Panther is hunting you, you don't want to waste this really powerful cooldown that can actually deny a Black Panther's close range engage, because it's your primary ability that can shut down that push by that Panther. And if you waste it doing something aggressive, trying to hit a tank, throw it across the map, whatever, you're not going to have it to shut down the hero that is actively hunting you. This kind of showcases how one specific hero can change how you're using a certain ability, and maybe you're going to use it more liberally or freely if the enemy doesn't have any Spider-Mans or Black Panthers, and you don't need to deny a flank or some form of close range aggression from the enemy. Now, number 5, and this one's really important, is mechanical skill. Does Rivals take good mechanical skill? Well, yes and no. Understand that Rivals at its core is a resource exchange game. It's not a third-person shooter. It's not you walk out and just dink everyone on the head. It's a game that requires you to resource trade abilities, trade cooldowns in favorable ways, gain slow advantages, and use ultimates in ways that will get team wipes and win team fights. This is the core aspect of Rivals that makes it far different from something like a Valorant game or a Call of Duty, but more similar to something that's like a MOBA, like League of Legends or Dota. And there are certain things that are gonna matter a lot more in Rivals than other shooters, like being on the same target, fighting together, and trying to deal with the enemy's win conditions as a team. This is why there's a lot of depth to a game like Rivals, and of course Overwatch as well, because there are going to be complex mechanics and abilities that you need to know about, or else you're not going to be able to game plan against them or set up a plan to shut them down. Now, with all that being said, it's still important to be mechanically proficient in a game like Rivals. In some ways, your mechanics are going to be actually challenged more, with characters flying around your screen and moving in ways that you never have seen in other games. Those characters are pretty hard to hit. But also, when you come up with game plans and proper strategies, there's a certain success rate that goes up when your mechanical skill actually accomplishes what you imagine. Like, imagine pushing someone that's 1 HP and then you proceed to whiff every single shot, even though you have full health, and there's no way you should lose that fight, but you lose it anyways. In addition to that, every single hero's mechanics is going to be very different from one another. So practicing one hero's mechanics might not match another hero's mechanics. And that's one of the reasons that I actually teach specialization in the long haul, because you would like to get really, really good mechanically at the, 3, 4, 5 characters that you like to play. Of course, you could decide just how mechanical you want to be. I think there's a lot of variety in Rivals. And if you're someone that doesn't come from a shooter and you're not that interested in being an aim god or someone that can outplay people mechanically, there are still characters that can still fit your playstyle and still get value without raw aim mechanics, even if there's other mechanical aspects about them, like proper timing and reaction, that you still need to work on. Number 6 is graphics and equipment. And I'm gonna be flat out honest, Rivals doesn't run perfectly. It definitely is gonna need constant optimization, and if you don't have a top-of-the-line computer, you're probably gonna struggle with your FPS a time or two. I do think that, especially for a hero shooter with really fast-moving characters and a need for visual clarity, having high frames is one of the most important things. This is why setting your settings to max out your FPS is one of the most important things you can do, not trying to make it so that the game looks pretty or visual. And I'm definitely going to be dropping a settings guide soon on this channel so that you know exactly what you can do to have the best settings and actually see the game but still have high FPS. That being said, especially if you're someone that is really committed to grinding Rivals, right now, a piece of equipment or an upgrade is the best thing that you could do, because you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. One of the things I like to do when I purchase stuff is I think about the dollar per use, right? And if you buy like a new mouse, or you buy like a new graphics card or a new monitor or whatever, you're actually going to get a lot more use out of that immediately because of how many hours you're going to be grinding on Rivals, right? If you plan to hard grind this game, you're really passionate about it, then you're going to get a lot of use out of that piece of equipment. And now might be the best time to upgrade because it becomes more worth it dollar per hour or more worth it dollar per use. I really like to think about things in a form of how much money am I spending on this thing per hour per dollar. So, if I buy something for $100 and I spend 100 hours, I spend $1 an hour. I think that this could be one of the best ways to justify an expense, and especially if you're someone that is going to be passionate about Rivals, now might be the best time to spend that expense and have a more positive experience with the game where you actually have that visual clarity and you have the performance you need to improve and have fun while doing it. And number 7 is about synergies, and it's the understanding that synergies don't always matter. This is something that really departs from Overwatch, where certain characters can have special synergies with each other, unlocking special abilities for certain characters and making them more powerful. And I know that a lot of these are flashy and cool, but it's also important for you to decide for yourself just how strong that synergy is. Like, as an example, in the beta, Magneto was absolutely absurd. One of the strongest characters in the game, and in Diamond plus Elo, would consistently get banned all the time in ranked play. But he didn't need his synergy. He didn't need it at all. And while it was cool to turn on his super sword and get a lot of damage and kills, that wasn't the reason that Magneto was super busted, and it also wasn't the thing that you needed to justify playing Magneto. So actually, in a lot of ways, the synergy can be a trap where it stops you from playing characters that you want to play, characters that you think are really strong, or not playing a character because you don't have the synergy, even though that synergy is not needed. Some synergies are going to be super busted and more powerful than others, but we'll definitely have a synergy tier list on this channel as well. A lot of people have been asking about that, and I think it's important to recognize what synergies are really worth pursuing and what synergies are not really all that important. And number 8, this is a huge departure from other hero shooters, and it's the fact that one-tricking is just not really possible in the same way that it is in other games. Like I said, past a certain rank in Diamond, you are going to have hero hero bans, where characters are banned on both sides. And typically, this is going to be the most busted hero that is banned, but there are other cases where creators or people that actively are known for playing certain heroes are targeted. As an example, there's a player, Winston Overwatch, that is a Hulk one trick, and he got Hulk banned all the time, forced off of his hero that he really liked. And I think that this is something that can happen all the time, where if you're a known community one trick, yeah, you're going to be forced off your one trick quite a bit. And I think in general, with you wanting to fill oftentimes the different roles, it would be in your best interest to at least have one hero that you can play in every single role that you're confident in, and then maybe a couple heroes that you can play in your role of choice that you're really, really good at. And I'm not going to say that you're filling every single game. Sometimes you're just going to pick the hero that you want to play and play it no matter what. But you don't want to create these non-games where no one on your team is actually capable or willing to swap at all. And then you're just basically giving yourself an auto loss because y'all don't even have the semblance of a real composition. You know, no tanks, no supports, the 6 DPS strategy. You're not going to win any games against competent opponents with that comp. So yeah, understand that one tricking is actually not only discouraged, but just flat out not possible. I would say that you want to be a bit more flexible in Rivals than you have been in previous hero shooters. And number 9 is about the spawn advantage. Spawn advantage is crazy fierce in Rivals, where if you don't win a team fight definitively, players can stall and stall and stall and make it impossible for you to actually clear a freaking objective. And I think there's a couple of really important things you need to know if you want to actually close out team fights in Rivals, especially when you're like about to cap like the 3rd point of the payload. That's incredibly hard. And I would say, first off, communication. Having the target priority, because when like a Venom comes out and it's stalling, and then people are like all focusing, like 2 people are focusing the Venom, 2 people are chasing like a support around, the DPS in the background, and then like your support is fighting that off. Everyone's on a different page, and it's really important if everyone's on the same page, focusing down the same target. Typically, you would like to be focusing the characters that if you focus together, you could eliminate the quickest. So while it might make sense, oh, we're going to focus the Venom, he might have too much stall capability, but he's gonna have to cycle out and run out of cooldowns for his health eventually if you just focus target a support, focus target another support, focus target a DPS. Now the Venom's alone. Eventually those characters are on cooldown waiting in the spawn room, and you're gonna be able to finally kill that Venom when he runs out of his resources, aka his abilities. And also, generally, try not to hyperextend. You still want to actually have good cover and good effective range, because, like, if you're playing a good position, the position you want to play in, now the opponent has to simultaneously come out and contest and try to come out and contest you, and they can't do both, right? They have to touch the point to stop it from capping. So you could put them in, like, a checkmate situation where they can never get into their effective range, and you are playing in yours. Like, you're playing far away, but you can still see the point. On Hela, you don't stand on the point so that the Black Panther can come out and attack you like in his effective range. He wants to contest and he gets to kill you at the same point. Like, you're really setting yourself up for failure here instead of playing the good positions with good cover with that effective range that we kind of harped on. In addition, you want to make sure that everyone's topped up and positioned well. Don't try to hyperextend and really try to close out a fight. I see a lot of fights end this way where people kind of sacrifice themselves to go kill somebody when your life is worth way more than theirs because they have spawn advantage. It's right next to them, so they're gonna get back to the fight far quicker than you. So you need to think about that. You're not trying to kill someone at the cost of your life. You are trying to stay around and consistently win several team fights in a row until you can sum up enough advantage or ultimates to close out the fight for good. Now, on the flip side, if you're on defense, before you go out and leave spawn, you need to decide this one thing. Are you a staller or are you a playmaker? And this is really important because we talk about effective range and trying to make plays and stuff like that. But as a defender, with you having spawn advantage, you really would love to trade or do something proactive to get kills. But if you have to touch the objective, you're limited, right? So you need to think, do I have the ability to go playmake? Like, do I have someone on my team that is able to touch the point, prevent the cap, and stall it long enough for me to go on a flank, go really aggressive, make a play? But if that's not the case, I need to be the one to stall. So you kind of identify what is your role coming out of spawn. What are you supposed to do? Are you trying to get enough kills and value so that you can actually eventually win the fight and eventually wipe the enemy team and hold them off? Or are you just the literal body that is preventing them from capping? They're very important things, and what characters you play and how you play it is going to change depending on what you're supposed to do. And the only way that you can recognize that is recognize how many enemies are alive, who's the target, who on your team is alive, what are they playing. These are all the questions you need to ask yourself before you come out of spawn, because it can better help you decide what to do, what to play, what to swap to. But last but certainly not least, we got to talk about win conditions. This is one of the most important things that is at the core of hero shooters, is team fights and trying to win team fights. So it's 6 players versus 6 players, and typically you want to completely wipe the enemy team. You want to completely win. And if you're the team that has people left standing at the end of it, you're the one that gets to hold the objective or cap the objective. You're the one that ultimately gets to get that definitive sort of progress that can't be erased. You know, things that change the spawn point or cap you 1 point in an objective like a King of the Hill. And one of the best ways to win a fight is with ultimates. Ultimates are super strong, and then oftentimes are the things that you develop a win condition around. Certain ultimates combined with each other, certain ultimates used in a certain way can get you a numbers advantage that you can leverage into a team wipe and ultimately the capping of an objective. So you need to simultaneously know what your win conditions are and do your best to help your team play to that win condition. Like maybe your win condition is to Eye of Agamotto people with Doctor Strange. So trying to keep them alive, play the neutral, not go and be super aggressive and try to go make a really proactive play where you can die, but set up, deny flanks, and wait for that ultimate so that you can follow it up. That's one example of playing towards your win condition. But also it's important to track enemy ultimates and know what ultimates do they have and how they're going to use them. And most importantly of all, what can you do to deny them? So like, it should never be a shock to you when an opponent pops an ultimate. And if you know that an ultimate is coming, you can put pressure on that character. You can conserve your cooldowns to shut that character down or their ultimate, and you can call it out and make sure that your team knows that there are certain ultimates that they need to be ready to play around. Because there's some ults that just don't do anything if you're ready and prepared for them, and you make sure to conserve your cooldowns to shut them down. Like, the difference is night and day between you having a couple of cooldowns to shut down like a Spider-Man ult in your back line, or you just not even thinking about it and then all of a sudden it's out of nowhere, you don't have any cooldowns, or it catches you by surprise and it kills 3 people. I do realize that tracking ultimates is definitely not going to be something that you're able to do day one. It's a pretty hard thing to fully grasp exactly what percentage an opponent has, but as a general rule of thumb, if someone hasn't used an ultimate in quite some time, multiple team fights, there's a very high chance they have it and they're waiting to use it, and you can position and play accordingly. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely let me know down below what video you want to see next, and I'll get right on it. Smash that like and subscribe, and check me out on stream at 5:30 p.m. CST, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday if you want to see me live. Thank you so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time.